welcome everybody. My name is Sabrina Ho. I'm the founder and CEO of Half the Sky, a career and headhunting platform for diverse talent. So thank you all so much for being here today. We're so excited to be partnering with IBM for this great webinar, Leadership Agility in Times of Change and Crisis. And also I would like to thank the audience joining us today from Singapore, Hong Kong, China, Japan, Korea, Australia, New Zealand, Indonesia, India, Vietnam, Philippines, and Poland. It's great to see everyone today. So some housekeeping rules. This session is being recorded, so please make sure you remain muted and your camera is off throughout the entire session. So the spotlight will be on the speakers. And if you have any questions, please leave them on the chat box and I will read it out for you during the Q&A. So today it's my great pleasure to welcome Eileen and Charu from IBM to share their thought leadership with us. A quick introduction. Eileen is currently the President and Country General Manager for IBM Philippines. She joined IBM as a system engineer in 1992, and she has close to 3 decades of experience across various technical, business, and executive management positions across various business units within the Philippines, ASEAN, and other Asia-Pacific countries. As technology and business thought leader, Eileen has evangelized digital transformations and diversity and inclusion in various fora. She's committed to move the Filipino talent, especially women, into key leadership positions and get the underserved, undermotivated external young breed into the STEM track. She also sits at the board of the American Chamber of Commerce in the Philippines, Philippine Business for Social Progress, and Philippine Business for Education. So welcome, Eileen. It's a pleasure to have you here with us today. And Charu is currently the partner at IBM and leads the consumer goods, retail, travel, and transport consulting practices in ASEAN. She has 20 years of end-to-end strategic consulting experience across the globe, working with the C-suite and corporate boards of Fortune 500 companies to address their most pressing challenges on digital reinvention and transformation of their businesses. And Charu is also part of the Singapore Computer Society and the Singapore Institute of Directors. She often speaks at industry events and advises economic and trade councils in ASEAN on digital and technology trends. She also mentors and invests in early stage startups and serves as a guest faculty at leading graduate schools. And finally, passionate about the role of women in leadership and board diversity, and is committed to accelerating the presence of women in STEM. So welcome, Eileen and Charu. We're very excited to have you two here today.
It's our pleasure. Thank you.
Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you, Sabrina.
Well, awesome. So businesses, leaders, and workers have faced crisis before, but COVID-19 is a uniquely complex and unpredictable crisis. Lockdown, social distancing, and working from home orders have impacted every aspect of organizations and the workforce. And it has also impacted the traditional held beliefs on what leadership should look like. The crisis today requires a new type of leadership that is clear, considered, and compassionate. But even more important is for leaders to demonstrate leadership agility, defined as the ability to make smart and effective decisions in a rapidly changing world. Many business leaders are facing the most complex business, social, and economic transformation that we have seen in a generation. So without further ado, I'm going to do a deep dive with Eileen and Charu on what it really takes to lead during a crisis. So I understand, Charu, in your role, you cover industries such as F&B, retail, travel, logistics, airlines, and airports. These sectors have been severely impacted during COVID-19 pandemic. How has the crisis shaped and transformed your industry?
Thank you, Sabrina. I think you're right. I have the dubious distinction of leading these industries for IBM in ASEAN. And you're absolutely right. I mean, the crisis has, our industries have been most severely impacted by the crisis. I mean, if you just look at the numbers in Singapore, but just as well in any other market, you know, every day we're seeing triple-digit numbers in terms of decline on retail. Our airlines are probably grounded for the next, 6 to 7 months with very few travel routes opening up. Consumer goods, in some parts have had, have had steady growth, especially in the health, the home care, the eatables area, but by and large, they've been hit very hard by disruptions in supply chain. So you're right to say that the sector per se has been facing a severe amount of decline, perhaps the kind of decline that they haven't faced in the last many years, right? But I think what has emerged from the crisis is that there is a distinct difference between how we ran these industries pre-COVID to post-COVID. I think if I summarize, we as consumers, we as shoppers, we as travelers, look at how our lives have been transformed. Our daily life in the last 4 or 5 months has been completely digitalized, right? And if you take a step back as a consumer, you've begun to stay indoors and order your essentials online. Even people who were, earlier not, were largely shopping offline, have downloaded applications that they've never before downloaded. Payments have gone contactless, but it's not just contactless payment, it's contactless everything, the way we enter buildings, the way we are interacting with each other, all of it has become more contactless. I think the other thing that's happened is that as the consumer behavior has changed, the consumer's expectations of what they will begin to expect from companies and brands have changed, right? They're expecting more convenience. There is more focus on health, welfare, environmental issues. So the consumer behavior is changed, which is causing massive transformation in these industries. If I look at what's going to happen to these industries going forth, I want to go back and look at what happened in the past when our countries, were shaped with some other crisis. So for example, when SARS broke out in this part of the world, that overnight catapulted the emergence of Alibaba and JD.com. When MERS broke out in South Korea and the Middle East, it moved countries to become more e-commerce centric. The 2008 crisis, which I've lived through, Eileen, I'm sure you've lived through, is it created almost a post-dollar economy. It created the emergence of fintechs. We moved to a gig economy. We moved to a sharing economy. So each crisis has transformed the way certain industries function. And I think the biggest transformation following this crisis is going to be that consumer behaviors are not just transformed for the short term. We expect these behaviors to be transformed for the medium term and the long term, which basically means that our industries, retail, consumer, have to now address these changing behaviors, either in terms of increased digital engagement, being present where the consumers are shopping, rejigging their supply chains to make sure that consumers get what they want when they want. And there is an entire, I suppose, a new industry which in the coming months, maybe years, will prop up, which is this move to home economy, right? You want everything now, but at home. Whether be it your essentials, be it your services, you want your nails to be done at home, all of those things will fundamentally change the way we are interacting with services and brands. So I think the transformation is undergoing. The full impact of the transformation obviously will be felt in the ways ahead, but once the consumer behavior changes, the industry itself undergoes a transformation. And I'm not even talking about travel. I think tourism itself will change, right? We may move to shorter haul travel. We may move to nearer home holidays. We may move to places which give us comfort in terms of how clean they are. How do they, ensure our welfare and wellness? So I think the crisis is transforming the way we as people live our lives and bringing digitalization as a way we consume the products and services of these industries. Right? I mean, I feel very passionate about it because this is what we're talking to our clients in the markets every day. It's almost setting them up for the next phase of growth, the next phase of recovery, which will be a different model from what they've been used to in the past.
Absolutely agree. Thank you for sharing, Charu. And following up with you, Eileen, the Philippines has been one of the most impacted countries by this pandemic, with the longest running country lockdown approaching 6 months, and has also been beset by 3 different crises back to back, including natural disaster. And Eileen, you lead IBM in the Philippines, one of the largest countries in ASEAN by population, and IBM's second largest country in APAC in terms of headcount. How has the crisis impacted the workforce, especially working from home?
Oh, yeah, Sabrina, it's quite a bit of a real change, right? Absolutely, what you said. Across many other countries, we are the longest. We are running the longest lockdown in 1 week. It's almost 6 months, right? We started about mid-March, And if you think about that, it was announced like a Friday night. And then in about 48 hours, the first working day, you absolutely had to work from home. So across all our workforce, and we are by the thousands here in the Philippines, over 95% just in that short span of time had to work from home, right? Whether you're supporting clients, you are doing finance and accounting work in the office, just one fell swoop. Now, we had to do that in just a few days. It's actually less than a week. And thankfully for us, we were able to really move, over, actually in the Philippines, it's even higher than 95%. We went all the way to 98%. But we are also very lucky that IBM gives us the technology to allow us to do this. Meaning we have the devices, we can work mobile, we can work anywhere. Of course, there are adjustments, especially for client services that we have to deal with. But really, it also posed a different kind of challenge, I would say, from different personas. One is as an employee, right? Again, in 48 hours, you have to change. All of a sudden, what you were expecting, you would do a week ahead, 2 weeks ahead. And did you bring all your files? You're not sure, right? Then all of a sudden, have I digitized them? Have I backed them up and so on? So everybody had to very quickly change. It was a bigger change, not as much for sales and distribution workforce, but those who were used to really being in fixed office spaces, right? That's one. The other one, and of course as employees too, we had to then shift the mindset where we used to be highly collaborative, face-to-face, working with teams in agile workspaces, and all of a sudden you're looking at the screen every single day for so many months, right? So very, very big change. Another big change is, I guess, for the managers, the manager persona. It has been challenging to now track your people, how to keep them engaged, how to check that they're well. If they were well last week, do they continue to be well this week? Will they continue to be well next week? So it's all of these questions. How do they feel, their sentiments, and all this? Again, thankfully for IBM, we have the ability to do pulse surveys with them. We can run our own surveys as managers. We have highly secure collaboration channels like Slack, where we can check each one of them. We have various employee engagement programs that allow us to get by and deal with all other managers as well. Of course, we deal with clients too. So it is also a mix. This thing in the pandemic for the Philippines, because of the cases, the nature of the cases that we had, we thought we had less cases back in July, and then it went up again. So this thing about you were working from home, then you return to workplace. Oh, but by the way, you got to return to work at home. Okay, so it is this dynamic decision making that you got to deal with because of the public health situation, in the country situation, which is really beyond your control. So all these things changing at the same time that you're also dealing with the client. On a personal side too, you also get to then deal with your roles. So we have roles as a mother, as a wife, as a colleague, as a friend. You now have to watch for each other, right? Working from home poses a new challenge. For those of you who have children, they think you're always available as a mother, right? Or because you're there, they physically see you. There is no way to absolutely just simply explain you're not available. For your colleagues, your clients, they will think you're always available because there is no traffic to deal with. So it's all of these real changes across the different personas and of course the individual and the professional. We have to deal with, how do you do career conversations? What kind of a job? What's my new role? What other new skills do I have? Thankfully, again, we have possibilities in IBM. We have a whole suite of these learning opportunities where across hard and soft skills, you know, we get exposed and we can interact with each other. We can continue to interact with all 170 countries around the world where IBM operates and still learn from each other and go very deep technical. We have been taking much of the time to really hone our skills. Again, very different ways. And of course, share with the industry like we're doing today. So really big change. But fundamentally, we shifted from a crisis mode back in, I would say, March, April, to now steady state. Because the steady state is really the new normal.
That's great to hear. Thank you so much, Eileen. So we all know, you know, this has been a once-in-a-generation pandemic. As leaders during a crisis, all eyes are on you. So Eileen and Charu, can you share with us how you have dealt with the pressure?
Yeah, I'll go first.
Yeah, go first.
Yeah. So I think, you know, I always say this, Sabrina, I mean, you know, many people say leadership is a privilege. Some people say leadership is a burden. I've heard very recently somebody say leadership is a burden of privilege. And I completely agree with that, right? Because you're carrying not only the pressure you feel, but the pressure that your teams, your clients, your stakeholders feel, right? So in terms of how do we deal with pressure? I mean, I follow this, you know, this 9C model, so to speak. And I'd love to share this with you. It's not as complicated as it seems. A lot of it comes naturally. But I think the first thing, is really important, is to stay calm, right? I mean, Eileen leads a country, so she'll talk about that as well, I'm sure. But the ability to stay calm and the ability to stay focused, remaining fearless, is probably the number one trait of a consultant, right? We're consultants by nature. Being able to take a large issue and being able to problem solve it, break it into small units, so to speak, so it becomes bite-sized. You know, you're no longer then faced with a challenge, with a mammoth task. You're then faced with something which is easy for you to resolve, even though it may be beyond you to resolve, but it's still, you know, you can take bite-sized steps towards, you know, resolution. I think the second thing is, and which is very important as a leader, you need to project confidence. You know, I mean, I think the ability to be calm and project confidence, even though, you know, this is a time where our people, or even we ourselves, may be feeling negative. There may be thoughts of fear. There may be thoughts of uncertainty. I think at the end of the day, you're stewards of your own feelings. And it is very important as leaders to bring your best game face to work. And therefore that kind of spreads a kind of optimism in the teams that, you know, they have the leadership, they have the right enablement that will see them through pressure. I think the third thing we need to do, which I know we do in our teams, big or small, is communicate. I mean, communicate relentlessly. If you look at the countries that have emerged better than the others, or if you look at places in the world that have done well, you will call out leaders who have, in a fact-based, transparent manner, communicated with their stakeholders and shared with them exactly what's going on, right? So you may not know, or you may not have all the answers, but as you share both what you know and what you don't know, you make others part of your journey. You make others part of a larger problem-solving initiative. I think that brings me to my fourth and fifth point, which is collaborate. I mean, I think today more than ever, we find ourselves, even though we are working remotely, today more than ever, we are, I would say, working a little bit more collaboratively. Obviously, you know, our company allows us to have the tools and mechanisms in place. You know, Eileen mentioned Slack, WebEx, being able to get together and brainstorm through Mural and whatever else. But also, we don't need to have all the answers as leaders. And I think as leaders, none of us can boast to have all the answers. The idea is, who can you reach out to in your team, or who can you reach out to in your larger organization who may have an answer? And then, you know, get those teams together, corral them. And I think leaders who do well under pressure are ones that are able to pull them together, which then, you know, the idea is to have a bias to action, is to be able to go and act, but using others as part of your extended team to be able to do so. I think the fifth and the sixth point is really, we have also seen, and I think this will become I wouldn't say a trend, but it will shape the future of work going forward, is a sense of community, a sense of shared purpose. No matter what country you were in, no matter what stage of the lockdown you were in, there was a sense of shared purpose that everybody is going through a crisis and everybody needs to huddle together to get out of it together, right? I think that shared purpose creates communities. It creates communities of people who may want to act together, feel, you know, the same feelings. These could be communities who may want to come and reskill together, you know. So the idea of having a community where you can lead by example and you can get the community to contribute is really important in being able to deal with that pressure. But then I think equally, when you're dealing with people, you as a leader need to be empathetic, right? I mean, empathy, compassion are probably, you know, the two most important tenets of how you go through a crisis or you go through change. And in fact, I would go so far as to say that empathy or compassion is the manifestation of leadership, especially in times of crisis, right? I'll give you an example. You know, IBM has 4 quarters and we finished our 3rd quarter, and my manager sent me, you know, a gift at the end of the 3rd quarter, as she did to the other members in her team. And it was a surprise. We didn't know it was coming, but when it did, you know, it said to us, it thanked us for the effort that we had put in, you know, in delivering that quarter. And I think that made us feel as though we were part of the team. It made us want to sort of act out together. So I think that empathy, that compassion, the ability to recognize that everybody is having a hard time, but you're in it together, is very important. I think the 7th point is very important, which is we work in a technology consulting company. We need to also have one eye. I mean, even though we're dealing with pressure, the larger sense of purpose is the fact that there is a commercial goal that we need to deliver towards, right? Now, in companies, some companies can have a commercial goal, some companies can have another sort of a goal, but all shareholders, all stakeholders have to understand that whatever you do needs to, at the end of the day, deliver towards that goal. It needs to get you towards that goal. We may be in recovery, but tomorrow we will have to come back out of that. So that commercial angle, the ability to be able to communicate to people, like working towards something which has to ultimately impact all of our lives. Because if there is no money to be made, if there is no, sales results to be delivered, it will impact a lot more lives. So it needs we need to have that razor sharp focus. I think the 8th point will be, I read this very recently. You know, in supply chain, leaders used to manage inventory called just in time. Now they're managing inventory in a manner called just in case, right? I think the importance of that is that you need to have a backup. I think if you look at the leaders across the world that have come out slightly better than the others, are people who had contingency plans or who may have suffered a similar mini crisis, you know, due to a different reason, but have been able to, you know, be prepared for it. I think that's been very, very, very critical. And then, of course, I think in a crisis, just focus, just go back to basics. You know, simplicity is key. You cannot afford to be, you know, firing on all, you know, on a bastion. So just go back, keep it simple, control things that are in your ambit. And I think at the end of the day, most importantly, I had done this during the last 6 months. I had blocked out a space on my calendar between, a couple of hours towards the end of the day where I did not want to take any phone calls, right? Because what's also happened during the crisis is there has been a merging of your professional and personal lives. You need to create that space because you are thinking all the time now. You are working all the time now. You need that white space to be able to strategize as to what do you need to do next. You need to find your quiet space, whether you do that by running or you do that by, you know, just exercising, or you do that however you do that. You need, as a leader, to find your own calm. Because if you don't, and if you're always fighting and always firing on all cylinders, chances are people are going to see you pedaling really hard under the water, right? So, you know, in short, when all eyes are on you, I think you need to lead by example. And those are just some of the things that we, at least, you know, in our leadership style, and as I see other leaders, both within IBM and outside of IBM, really, really sort of adopt while we're dealing with so much pressure.
Eileen?
Yes, you'll find it interesting, Sabrina, and for the team here that maybe some of the guiding principles that I personally have followed through. You mentioned the last 3 back-to-back crises for me in the country. really would support what Charo was just sharing. For me, rule number one, right? Grit and focus. Okay, there will be a lot of bad news. There will be 1,000 people who want to advise you. There will be good and bad things, right? But you need to have a very, very good grip, right? What are you dealing with? You have to be very clear. What is the problem you are trying to solve, right? So that you can weed out the noise, you can focus, and really continue to focus, because it will keep coming back to you, right? So second one is that really all this, the crisis especially that we've gone through, it's very challenging but important to look at what's the bright side. The crisis will always tend to be a dichotomy. Uh, this is the bad thing that happened, but really, what's the good thing? Okay, it could have even gone worse. Okay, so if, for instance, during the typhoon, we lost track of all our employees in one location for a full 36 hours, right? So it will give you the creeps, right? Nothing, not even satellite for some reason communications could work, right? But it gives you the creeps. But you have to be thankful the two employees went to the nearest radio station and tried to get the signal, right? I mean, things like this, they could be very small things, but it really gets you out of it, right? You may be on a lockdown, but you're thankful that you're all together. Many are still very, very healthy. We can still talk to each other. We have technology. We have secure technology, and we have each other, and you have your job. Things like this. There will always be a bright side, because when you show this, you demonstrate this, and you are a model, you can infect others. Because if everyone's down, you're not going to solve any problem. The third rule for me is physical and mental energy. They are very critical during this time of a crisis, right? Physical, I guess, is obvious to everybody. But one important thing for me is when you do it, right? For example, and this is personal, don't take offense, but I try to do my exercise first thing in the morning. Why? Because my job requires very deep, physical and mental energy to focus and do so many critical decisions during the day. My mind needs to be very, very active first thing, right? But I also need the quiet time, like Charles said. I need my time for meditation, for prayer, and whatnot. So because it starts your day, it starts you getting going into the right track, the right pace, okay? So that you can carry on even if there are so many things to deal with at the end of the day, the decisions you need to make. Which brings me to the fourth thing. Decisions will be tough, but decide anyway. So as the leader, people look up to you like you have all the right things to say. You may have the best decisions, but sometimes you don't. And you will not have all the decision parameters at the time you need them. But you have to decide anyway. Because the option to not decide have even graver consequences. So it's important that at least you can decide the best way you can at the time that you have to. So again, decide anyway. And finally, and I would think this is the most important of all, be humble. Because you don't have all the answers. You may be good at what you do, but during crisis, again, it might be the first time, like all of us. COVID was the first time we're ever experiencing something of this scale. But we need to be humble to ourselves, to our colleagues, what we know, don't know, again, at a certain time. Because only by being humble, you will get help. And people will want to help you. You'll be surprised what kind of help you will actually get. So these ones are the ones very, very important to me as guiding principles. Like I said, it was during the time of crisis, but I thought I've shared that, this really helped me get through this important back-to-back crisis we had in the Philippines. And I think it will apply whether you are in the Philippines or another country.
Yes, thank you so much, Eileen and Charu. There's a lot of golden nuggets. I'm taking mental notes. So, Eileen and Charu, the pandemic has ushered in significant transformations in the way we work, where we work, and how we interact with each other. It appears we are on the verge of a radical change in workplace norms. How can leaders create a new and better normal? And where does empathy as a leadership trait fit into the new normal, in your opinion?
Yeah, maybe Charu, I start first. I think empathy, Charu already shared earlier, is very, very critical. I also spoke about the personas, right? If you know who are the personas you are dealing with, right, you've got to be at the other end of the line, right? So that's why empathy is a non-negotiable. It's correct, right? You need to know where the other side is coming from. But which persona are you dealing with is important to understand too. Is it the employee side? Is it the role as a mother? What is it you're dealing with, right? But I'll share, I've shared this to some before, but I will share with you 3 R's that for me helps us deal with a better and a different normal, right? The first R for me is resilience, right? No matter what we do, we gotta stand up, okay? Both from a personal resilience perspective, stand up, okay? Pick yourself up, okay? As well as the business side. Because at the end of the day, we're trying to do a job here, we're trying to do business, whatever it is that is your role, even if you're an entrepreneur, right? Resilience is really a non-negotiable at this time. Grit focus, remember, don't be so down because of all the bad news, right? If you focus, you can be resilient yourself, you can move on and you can move forward. The second R for me is a pre-COVID versus a post-COVID. If we spoke, Sabrina, maybe back in January, I wouldn't say this. But today, reset your mindset, again, is another non-negotiable. Okay? Let us forget that whatever was the way we were used to pre-COVID is the same in post-COVID. Let me just give very concrete examples. We're dealing with clients, an approval process. You thought you had budget. Well, by the way, now the budget could be there, but it's cut. Or whoever's the approver before, there's now a new set of approvers. Or you probably thought you could do it with this set of approvers, but there's a very different way the board wants to do it. So very different changes, right? Employees who used to be very strong themselves, now the rock stars are very different kinds of personalities. You'll be surprised. Some who don't get to thrive before in a very structured environment where everything is predictable, oops, they're really struggling right now. And the ones who are able to thrive better are dealing with a very dynamic environment. They're very comfortable with the unpredictability that we now have, right? And the last R for me is one of the 9 practices of IBM, right? We say restlessly reinvent. Let's not get tired of thinking about this, right? Because we will learn as we go. We just need to be restless, telling ourselves, it's okay. Learn new technologies, reinvent yourself. You don't know, right? And we've seen many examples across demographics that this is really possible. And if we think about this, that helps you gain the right mindset to deal with this new normal. Whether you're creating a new market, you have a new job, you're dealing with a bigger family, you're dealing with work-life integration, for me, these are really fundamental things. Charu?
Thanks, Aline. I think you're right. I mean, we can't go back to the good old days, and the good old days here is literally January of this year or December of last year, right? I mean, I think the new normal is being called a new normal because it is how it's going to be. There are a couple of things I think we probably need to look at, how our clients and we ourselves as IBM are looking at coming out of the crisis, right? I think the first is, in the short term, all of us are trying to recover. We are recovering lost ground. We are recovering, the ability to either work from offices or return to work. So we are trying to recover what we've lost in the last 6 to 7 months. And in order to recover, what we're trying to do is we're trying to pivot towards thinking inside out, right? The focus now is not so much about, focusing on ourselves, focusing on, making sure, while it's still important to make sure everybody is safe and healthy, we are now beginning to look at, what do we now need to deliver towards? What's the outcome we need to achieve? How do we need to recover? What's the measurement of recovery, right? So it's got to be a little bit of an inside out view, which is driving how do we need to recover. I think the second thing is the leaders, and we're seeing this happen in our own company, we're beginning to write a new playbook, and this is about adaptability, right? What you said, Eileen, is very important. None of what is happening today wasn't happening yesterday. There was still pivot towards automation. There was still outsourcing of offshoring of repetitive processes to probably places that were low cost or more efficient. There were still new technologies such as robotics, blockchain being used to relook at your supply chains. But I think the new playbook is really around, once you visualize the outcome that you want to get towards, you need to start defining what is success in the long term and how your organization will adapt. What are the new behaviors that you will exhibit to be able to deliver to those outcomes, right? That's about reimagining your operations, rethinking about what your organization needs to look like to be able to deliver to your objective of recovery. But I think now I come to the third point, which is, in order for you to rethink your operations, you need to start rethinking your organization. You cannot be adaptable till the time you do a couple of things. Today more than ever, you need to, I suppose, empower your employees, your stakeholders. And I say this because, a lot of organizations will continue to work remotely in the medium term to the term that we know. In order to work out of home, in order to, for factory workers, for professionals to work from home, organizations are reposing a lot of trust in people, in teams. In order to repose that trust, the organizations are providing teams and people with tools that are making their lives easy in order to work remotely. But you also need to then make sure that these teams are working with agility. In order to execute your behavior of adaptability, you need to be able to execute both with trust and agility. These teams now need to work in incremental ways, right? You can't get them all together to execute this one large project, that we were all used to doing before COVID. We now need to think about, how do we add value to our organizations, to our clients in sprints? The word agility has been used for so long. And today more than ever, people are beginning to realize that agility is the consequence of your adaptable behavior. If you want to be truly adaptable to what's happening, and you want to be able to adapt quickly, you need to start operating with agility, which means you do things in small increments. You are willing to course correct. You're willing to get small teams together that interact, then go away. You're able to bring distributed teams together. You're willing to taste failure for longer term success, right? And all of these become, for me, the most important learning, or where organizations are beginning to finally embrace agility, which otherwise used to be in the domain of the digital officer or the domain of the technology officer. Today, the way we are working, even from home, is a manifestation of how agile we are becoming, right? We are looking at doing things in small bits and pieces rather than trying to bite the whole. I think that's going to be very important. This is also helping companies speed up decision making. I think, Eileen, you talked about it. One has to take a decision one way or the other. You may not have all the information at your hand, but today you're having to take those decisions. I think the underlying part, I suppose, the substratum to this, or the underlying capabilities, Sabrina, that you will see leaders stress more and more, is getting an enterprise view of data, is getting an enterprise grip on what's happening to your stakeholders, shareholders, consumers, customers, suppliers. that data exists. How do you harness that data to be able to take decisions in real time? Companies that are emerging a little bit better or ahead of the curve are those that had started that journey pre-COVID and had started to look at an enterprise view of data. So I think data-based decision-making, analytics-based decision-making, whether it's at the leadership level or it's at the functional level, will become very, very significant. And I think the last bit that I want to talk about is, how do you now look at, I suppose, marrying your business plans, your business goals, your business objectives to your technology plan, your technology goals, your technology vision, right? Very often when, as IBM, we talk to our clients, the CIO has one vision, maybe the CFO or the CEO has a different vision. Today, more than ever, we are seeing one united voice. The business is driving the adoption of technology. The COVID has accelerated the use of these technologies, but now these have become part of your business. So today, more than ever, agility has become onto the radar of the CEO. How do work? Who gets reskilled? How do you operate and create teams? Have moved away from just being a CHRO function to becoming a CEO function, right? Adaptable behaviors, is coming top down as leadership is displaying those skills. So I think as leaders, purpose-driven, adaptable, and making sure that you have a resilient backbone in your organization, which is technology enabled, which has the right infrastructure in place, is going to be the backbone of how we step into the new normal, right? I mean, and this is coming top down, which to us, from a consulting side, is becoming very heartening. For the first time, we're seeing these two worlds of technology and business come together.
Thank you, Tarun. And in challenging times like these, where disruption, which we talked about, and in some respects, chaos is all around us, and leaders in your respective fields, with everyone working from home, how have you created a sense of normalcy and togetherness with your team?
Yeah, maybe I start first, Tarun. This is, I mentioned earlier, one of the personas would be the employees. Basically, you're always part of a team or you're part of a group. This I would say was easy in the beginning, relatively, because you gamify, you gamify things, meet together, we do WebEx together, we send each other food. That's fine. That's the fun part, right? But as you extend the lockdown, it becomes a very different thing. Maybe you initially cook together, you want to exercise together, but you lose the novelty of the idea, right? So we need to be very creative, that the connectedness with our teams happen not only at the personal level, our skills, our hobbies, the professional level, but also across teams, right? Because initially within your team is what is needed. But you will find over time, as you continue to work from home, you will know whoever is in your team already, even their personal lives, but they will want to learn more from other people. So we need to bring the outside in, like we're doing right now, okay, or the inside out. You want to allow your teams to share their learnings with other teams, or other teams being guests in your team meetings, for instance, and still being, a big part. I find that there are also individuals, for example, that, you also have to deal with mental wellness issues, right? They will appear okay, they will be in a meeting very bubbly, but the moment, the meeting is over and they're alone, it's a very different thing for them because they're just in a room. So it's this constant connectedness, right? Really, really making sure you connect at different levels and making sure there are different lens, different experience, different types of people that they talk to in different disciplines. So we do a lot of that, and we share, again, across many of the collaborative channels that we're fortunate to have in IBM. And again, also extending to the families. we should be okay. We have a work from home pledge, but we also should be okay that as we do our working from home, we should be comfortable that in certain cases, your toddler will probably appear on screen and maybe want to join your meeting for a few seconds, or somebody walks at the back. But this is already the new normal, right? So long as they do not intervene with the meeting, there will be disruptions like this, but it should be okay. It should be normal, right? So many of this, right? But it's for us to adjust. It's again different levels of wellness that we need to be conscious of, and doing it across teams, and highly collaborative, not only your organization but really outside too.
Yeah, I agree. I agree. I think I'm going to probably answer the fourth question before the third question. I think, I mean, I suppose the case for diversity in leadership has always been there. I mean, crisis or no crisis, right? You don't just want a bunch of middle-aged men making decisions for everything, right? And I'm being facetious, but it is true, right? The case for leadership exists. But I think in a crisis, as Eileen has said, it gets accelerated for a couple of reasons. I mean, if you just look, and I honestly think this has been a crisis where you and I have felt the crisis the same way, in sort of the same way, right? What has happened is, by remote working, what we're doing is we're inviting our entire professional life into our houses, right? Eileen, you talked about toddlers, cats, dogs, what have you, right? You can see my house behind me. So we've brought our entire professional life into our house. That in itself requires a lot of empathy, and the collaboration has to go beyond how you deal with just colleagues at work, versus now dealing with people who have families, who have children, who have lives, and those lives have now meshed together. Diverse teams cater to that, because diverse teams bring viewpoints, bring bring their experiences, which are different, and therefore being able to work with these diverse teams, it's easier for leaders, for your teams, even for your clients, to be able to get the benefit of melding those experiences together, right? I mean, you're no longer talking to a colleague, you're talking to a colleague who has a black cat and 5 children. It's a very different way of how we look at our colleagues, how we treat our people, right? So diverse teams help us understand our own people better. I think the second bit is, in diverse teams bring a certain amount of resilience to our operations, right? I mean, we can go at it alone, but diversity is the backbone of resilience, right? We are bringing in different experiences, which naturally give us a head start when it comes to being set up for success in the future, or for dealing with adversity in the future, simply because now we're coming from different backgrounds, and different backgrounds necessarily mean that we've come from different senses of what we've lived through, and we're no longer a homogeneous mass. So it helps us understand and deal with adversity a lot better. I think the third bit is a balanced point of view, right? It's diverse teams bring more, I suppose, a more center forward point of view. We're able to understand what's going on both in the team, at our clients, outside of our clients better, because it's a more balanced point of view, right? So the role of diversity has always been there. It has got accelerated in crisis simply because we are now looking at working with our colleagues, who are not just colleagues, but these are people, and we are all faced with the same challenge. And I think the other bit to note, Sabrina, for me is, no matter what country you've been, no matter what stage of the pandemic you've been, most countries, no matter how far they are, have exhibited very similar behaviors. We may have run out of, say, pasta and toilet paper here. So did so did the folks in the US. So did the folks in Western Europe. Right now, the way we panicked, or the way we did pantry loading, was the same that people did in other countries. So I think the other bit we need to understand is, at the heart of it, we are going through, and we are going through this, and we are trying to recover from this fully. We need to come in and get together. So I think diversity And the more diverse teams we have, the more they are a mesh of experiences, we will return to normalcy, ahead of time. And I think organizations, and I can speak from an IBM perspective, which is definitely more diverse in the way that, we have a lot more, for example, women leaders. We are also seeing that, countries that have women presidents or women prime ministers at their helm are navigating through this crisis better. Now, that may not just be because, women are good at doing this. I don't want to make it as simplistic as that. In fact, it's reductionist. But I think companies, countries which allow or which are open enough to have a balance of leadership, have a more diverse leadership, are already organizations that are ahead of the others, right? They have created that structure. They have created that platform which allows people to be able to express themselves, come from different backgrounds. So I think these are the companies that will shoot ahead towards the new normalcy ahead of others.
Thank you. Thank you. And rapid digitalization and transformational technologies such as AI, blockchain, and quantum computing are reshaping the business landscape. So what are the 3 essential things business leaders should be doing now to seize the opportunities of tomorrow?
So maybe I'll go at this first, right? I think we've touched upon this in different ways. I think the 3 things we need to be doing, business leaders, and indeed our own clients that we talk about, is, I think as we enter recovery and we're looking at re-emerging from recovery, the leaders have to be shaping a medium-term and a long-term agenda, right? I mean, there is a clear acknowledgement that what we are today, we may not be in the next 6 to 8 months, as probably we emerge from this crisis. Therefore, the playbook I talked about earlier, the ways of working I talked about earlier, having a purpose we talked about earlier, I think that the things that business leaders the first thing the business leaders need to be doing is aligning on their long-term vision, growth, and strategy, and ensuring long-term and medium-term growth and strategy, and making sure that when people are looking at the way these companies are looking to recover, it's not just recovery in the long term, but it's probably reimagination, reinventing, as you called it, Eileen, that how are we looking to come out, but in a different way, because we are no longer going to be what we were pre-COVID. That's number 1. I think number 2, it's not just also about these exponential technologies, but it's using these technologies to be able to get closer to that mission that these companies have set for themselves, right? So for example, if you need to, most companies will find that they have had to simplify their current technology or their current business processes, right? And focus on a few areas and do them really well, or focus on supply chain of a few products and make sure that those products are available where people need them, or focus on customer experience and digital engagement for a particular segment or for a particular market, and make sure that people there are engaged, right? So the first thing is, look at technology as a means of enabling your future vision, and focus on 1 or 2 areas which help you get close. I mean, there is no doubt in my mind, most companies will start to look at reinventing their top line, right? Coming out and looking at how do you need to go and recover your revenue. So therefore, customer experience, digital engagement is going to become very, very important, because you have to recover a lot of ground in a very short period of time, right? But the way you need to do it and what technologies you need to do it could fundamentally be different from the way you were doing it earlier, because it's not going to be more of the same. It's going to be a little bit different. So, you're no longer engaging with people, unidimensionally, but you're engaging with people through multiple channels. You need to be, the way you're looking at engaging with people needs to be contactless, right? How do you build that into the way you go to market? The way you look to engage with people has to be at every single point. So the way when a person calls you to report that their goods haven't turned up, to the time that there is some self-service to say, look, what can I do to get a refund? All of these channels need to work in tandem. So that's going to be number 2. I think that the third thing is going to be, once you've got your top line sorted out, and you've got your back end simplified, you need to focus on what are the 3 or 4 things that are going to give you the most amount of innovation in the market. Because I think increasingly what is happening is that you're looking at companies looking to partner with other people in their industry or across industry. Because again, when I talked about diversity also applies to the diversity of businesses. Companies are now looking to partner with other companies to create ecosystems. This was already happening pre-COVID, but increasingly you're finding that those partnerships are becoming very focused. So your ride-hailing companies are also becoming companies through which you get your food and your groceries, right? You're seeing that online platforms, I mean, telehealth, for example, for the last 10 years, we've seen the promise of telehealth, right? I've never sought in the last 10 years an appointment or medical advice on the phone. In the last 4 months, I've called up a doctor and got remote face-to-face, telemedicine 4 or 5 times during the last 6 or 7 months. So increasingly those partnerships and the way we look to deliver our product and service will change. Therefore, the delivery mechanisms and how do you make sure your supply chain is standing up to these channels will become very important. I mean, to me, like I said, each and every day of our life has been digitalized, right? And technology is no longer the constraint here. It is using the right technology, empowering the people with the right skills to be able to deliver towards your new playbook, your new purpose is going to be key. So upskilling and reskilling and intentional upskilling and reskilling is going to become important. I mean, to give you an example, I think in the as IBM, as our clients are pivoting towards these new opportunities, using new technologies, we are spending an enormous amount of money training our people to be ready for these technologies of the future, right? I mean, how do we, we are going to see a lot of companies invest in resilience through infrastructure, right? Through their journey to cloud, being able to talk that language of the cloud, being able to talk the language of digitalization, you need to intentionally empower your workforce. So I think people will become a very important point of a CEO or a CHRO's agenda, and how because these people are going to be the ones who are going to help deliver the opportunities for tomorrow. Eileen, would you like to add?
Yeah. So just very quickly, I know we're short of time, right? But just to support also Charu, first one for me is, yes, embrace technology. The future is going to be about, and we advocate, it will be contactless operations. It will be about dynamic services delivery. Don't think that you will always be in your data center knowing where your data resides. That's no longer going to be the game. Okay, you should not care anymore where it is, because you may not even get there, right? This is the reason why technologies like cloud are becoming more prevalent right now. The next point will be data and AI will be technologies you will face, right? I mean, data will be a lot of data. You'll get inundated by data because the technology allows you to have it. But what are you going to do with it? Not all of us will be able to process it at the speed that we want. This is where artificial intelligence will help augment. But with that, AI needs to be trusted, okay? It needs to be evidence-based. They need to prove to you why the decision suggested to you is such, okay? What is the source? What is the confidence level? Luckily, technologies allow you to do that. We have Watson in IBM, but all of this, we will deal with this in every process that we are working with. And second point is really, you embrace change, right? As a business leader, the unpredictability of times will definitely be there, even for process and talent. So for our workforce, we need to be open to how are we going to transform also the kind of workforce we have. Do we need to do half mobile if you're still not on mobile? Well, if you're still 100% in the office, think about it, right? How are you going to do ratio for real estate to the workforce? If you weren't thinking about this, you're going to think about it now. If you do not have agile workspaces, think about it now. Because these are the ways we have to transform the workforce in our workplace, right? And then finally, because every dollar, every peso will count, or whatever your currency is, cost optimization is key. The goodness is that there are many ways to consume technology today, for example, because that's gonna tip up the platform in terms of where the portfolio of your spend will be, right? Maybe technology will get a little bit more as you shift, right? But there are now many ways to consume it, right? So let's think about that, but it needs to be very, very deliberate.
Thank you. And can both of you share your thoughts on how the crisis will accelerate the shift to the future of work? And in your opinion, are both employers and employees prepared for the future workplace and ready to embrace this change?
I would say let's not assume that everybody's going to be ready, number one. But what is important is whether you are the employer or the employee, we need to help each other adopt the technology if we need to, okay? Technology, ADOPT, adopt, and adapt in the future, right? So this crisis actually helps us grow even better as, you know, as personal life and as well as in our professional life. Why? Because it forces us to emerge smarter and stronger and really, truly be resilient, because there's no other way. Okay, we can only depend on each other. This is not the time to be individual in approach. This is the time to lean on each other and lean with our ecosystem. So I think that's truly the best way. Ecosystem, even if it means, you know, having an ecosystem together with your who you think are your competitors, because COVID does not understand competitor or, you know, individual. It's not like that, right? I think the crisis will help us get there. Okay, so we just need to shift our mindset, reset our mindset, and again, restlessly reinvent ourselves. Charu?
No, I think you said it. I mean, I think the future of work is where we are today. I mean, the future of work is not going to be any different. I think we are going to continue to work remotely, and working remotely, working flexibly doesn't just mean working out of home. It also means working in a very different style. We talked about agility earlier. We talked about different hours earlier. We talked about how do you make sure that these people who, all of us who are working from home, are empowered with the right tools, the right infrastructure to be able to contribute to work. So the future of work is also around, you know, what are the areas in an enterprise that will no longer require people, which can be easily automated, and therefore the people that come up are people that are left without perhaps having employment in the future. How do you then reskill them and upskill them so you raise overall productivity of your people at work, right? It'll also mean that as you are doing work, you need to proactively, intentionally look at how do you embrace data and make decisions based on that data, right? The future of work is going to be a lot more data driven. And therefore, you know, how do you bring people together to be able to do all of this is going to be, you know, an enterprise-led decision. So I think, are we ready for it? I think we're getting towards it. People are beginning to talk about it, but people at the center of the enterprise, and I keep saying this, is going to be the most important change that you will see pre and post COVID, right? How do you manage people, and how do you manage people to drive adaptability and agility is going to become key.
And one last question before we move on to Q&A. I know we're a little bit overrun, but for me, I'm somebody who worked in the talent solution business for close to 15 years. You know, I've always been very fascinated of how companies spend millions each year trying to find the secret sauce that will enable them to retain and attract great employees. So Eileen, you've been working at IBM for the past 3 decades. And Charu, you've joined IBM from one of their biggest competitors. What are the reasons that kept you, Eileen, to stay, and for you, Charu, to join?
Okay, to stay at IBM. Yeah, I thought when I joined IBM, I was the first batch from competition and I'd leave in 3 years. And here I am, it's 3 decades. So to me, really, it's all about IBM allowing me truly be the best version of myself, because it allows me to, you know, deal with pioneering roles that, you know, I can shape, and gives you the sandbox for it. It really will allows you to be family, but still be in a very challenging environment. I love challenges personally myself. IBM never runs out of, you know, this giving you the challenge, but it allows you to also be yourself, right? And to create a market that you can be in. And as I mentioned, it truly means a lot to us, right? IBM is a company that actually reinvents itself through thick and thin, through the crisis. I have been through 3 major crises, even in IBM when we almost closed shop. Okay, and IBM has been very decisive. No, it is not. It is not afraid to change. It is not afraid to reinvent, as we are doing that right now. We are reinventing ourselves. We're taking this time as well through the pandemic to learn new skills, to be a different new IBM, new normal that will also help both our clients and our employees and all our stakeholders really get to thrive in this new environment.
Yeah.
Sharon?
For me, this is an interesting bit, right? I mean, I think you're right. I joined IBM from a competitor, and I think one of the key reasons for me joining IBM was that it's and I see it in play every day. It's 100-plus-year-old company, but in the way sometimes we operate, because we are hungry to grow, and we sometimes, and it's so, it may sound paradoxical, but sometimes we operate as a startup. Because we are hungry, we need to display behaviors that are allowing us to grow faster ahead of the market. And that leadership and that freedom that comes with being able to choose the areas we want to truly go after and get the support of the leadership teams in IBM to go after those areas and have the backing and the funding, so to speak. I think that is very startup-like. So if, it's a big company, but if you're in the right space at the right time, you can be in sort of like a startup mode, which is very exhilarating. I think the second point, which is really, really important for me, was, it is a company that puts, I suppose, its money where its mouth is. I mean, we are not talking about women leadership or women in leadership positions in 2020, 2050 or 2025 or 2030. I take pride in saying that key leaders in IBM in Asia, many of them are women. Our global CEO till the beginning of this year was a woman, right? Amongst a handful of women, women in the Fortune 100 or the Fortune 500, right? The important part is that it is a company that has already seen the importance of diversity. And in many parts of the business, it has already given women the ability to lead. And I think that to me is an extremely important part of how this company has managed to sustain. And it's not just women. I was the first, company to employ a woman of color in the US. And it's got a very robust Pride program. So I think the importance of having diversity at the center of operations is very key. Can we do better? Sure, we can do better. But at least having women in percentages higher than you see in corporate boards and corporate leadership teams, and having it here and now is already proof of the fact that it's a company that values diversity. To me, that's really important. And then if you take that diversity and then you match it with that startup-like feeling, you want to come to work, you want to be able to make a difference, and you think you've got the backing of the company that gets it right. I think those were really key to me. And when I joined IBM, the first, and I think I shared this with you, Sabrina, before, day one of my, the gentleman who hired me is now in another leadership position in Europe. But the first day when I joined the company, he looked at me and said, you need a strong woman sponsor or a strong, and within 5 minutes of me having walked into his office, he had connected me to a very powerful woman leader in IBM in another part of the world. Again, testament to the fact that you want women to be successful. And I think the other bit is, as women share stories of success with each other, Eileen and I talk very often, right? We go to market together, we meet clients, we build upon each other. We are successful because of each other. If we fail, we share our stories of what we can do differently. If I have a challenge, I feel no shame in reaching out to her and asking for help. And I'm sure, vice versa. So I think it's very supportive when it comes to growing the careers of the diverse leadership that it has. So, I think I got it right.
That's an amazing story. Thank you so much. And so we are moving on to our Q&A. We are overrun, but there's a lot of amazing questions from the audience. So I hope two of the speakers will stay and answer all of our questions. So this question is from Luann. Can you share with us a crisis you have managed, and how were the team and company able to support you? And what are the challenges?
Yeah, Charu, you wanna? Okay, maybe we pick one each, right? So maybe this one. We've spoken about the crisis on pandemic already a lot, right? But what was a unique crisis for Philippines recently, just a month prior to the pandemic, was the volcanic crisis. Okay, we had the volcano, which was practically dormant for many decades, and then all of a sudden became very active, and became a threat to one of our locations, right? The threat was really a natural, not your usual natural calamity kind of threat, but it's really ash, right? So when you have BCP all over the place, right? This was a cause of extreme BCP in the sense that it affected many other locations, and it's because you're dealing with enemy that you cannot see, right? So it was medical. It required you to use diversity and inclusion at its best, right? Because you needed to have to deal, again, like I said, you have to decide anyway, right? But you needed decision parameters that requires the diverse membership within a crisis management team that I had to broaden and expand beyond just the usual real estate, medical, and so on, just so we hear all the different perspectives that will affect us. Because do you relocate people? How long are you going to take them in the office? How are you going to monitor? We're talking about PM 2.5 type of, dust particles that could hardly see and barely, get, equipment at that time very quickly to monitor, right? Do you use an app? To what extent can you use technology? You have money to get shuttles, but you cannot even bring shuttles there. There are very practical, many practical challenges that sound simple, but when you go through and execute it, it requires careful deliberation, and it needs the lens of a very diverse set of people that allowed me to manage through the crisis and be able to handle the different personas, right? So to me, in that scenario, a lot of it was helped by, I go back, the grit and focus. I go back to really what's the positive side of it. And I knew, I raised my hand, there's a part I need help, despite seeing all the lens of the crisis management team. And then somebody is able to help us. And then we make the decisions together. And then we also crowdsource, so to speak, the decision from the people we were managing, meaning the affected people. Because sometimes you get into a stalemate of a decision, but you have to ask the stakeholder that you really, the subject of the crisis, right? In this case, the employees who were affected. And they actually help give us the answers. So you'll be surprised what you actually get out of that. So again, net of it is that this is a good example how the diversity of ideas, and because of the diversity of professions, the people represented in the crisis management team, you're able to manage getting to a better decision and getting to a decision faster, and doing it the optimal way, right? The challenges were very practical at that time.
And these two questions from Pooja. What keeps you motivated during the chaos? And she got called upon the opportunities because recruitment team thinks she will fill in the diversity quota. What are your suggestions for her to respond?
I know. I mean, this diversity hiring, diversity quota, sometimes it grates on your nerves, right? I mean, you are half, you're called half the sky, but we are half the population of the world. I look forward to the day when somebody will stop calling us diversity, because we are the norm. We are not diversity, right? And it really bothers me when you say that women need to come through the diversity quota. But the other way of looking at it is that even at entry points in companies, especially in STEM companies, and forget about leadership positions, the number of women who are coming in are in terms of magnitude, much lower than women. In the recruitment funnel and through our initial hiring, even at positions, you will find that fewer women come in through the STEM, hiring. And obviously by the time they reach leadership positions, there are barely any left. So I think, if you get an opportunity to be part of a team that's actively looking to bring in more diversity, I'd say take it in your stride. Perhaps don't dwell so much on the wording around it, because people are trying to do their best. Sometimes with the change in behaviors, the change in wordings will also come, right? I think this is your opportunity to become part of a team that probably is valuing diversity. And I would look at, looking at, what can you do to A, add value, and B, as you bring in diversity, how will that company benefit from your presence in their midst, right? So that to me, take it in your stride. I think number two, what keeps you motivated during chaos? I think I have been in management consulting, technology consulting for the last 20 plus years. If there was no chaos, we wouldn't be around, right? Our clients come to us because they want to be ahead of that chaos, want to be ahead of that digital disruption, want to be ahead of the disruption that's being caused. They don't want to be disrupted. So they're already in some sort of a chaos. I think what keeps me motivated is a single-minded ability to be able to break down chaos into smaller pieces, never get straddled with, there's so much breaking down. Being able to break it down into smaller pieces and address each piece, because then you're against a smaller monster than chaos, which is a much bigger monster, right? That's number one. And I think number two is a lot of this is self-motivation, right? I mean, the ability to be able to be single-minded in terms of where you want to get to, which is why I keep saying, as leaders, as people leading our clients, the ability to visualize the outcome is very important. And once you do that, you automatically start to find your way through the chaos. I just want to add one thing, which is the 80-20 rule, right? It is our tendency to focus on the problem 80% of the times, while focusing on the solution maybe 20% of the times. And you've got to switch that around. If you truly want to come out of the chaos, you need to start focusing on the solution 80% of the time, but give the problem its due importance, which is just 20% of the time. So I think those, combination of that keeps me really motivated during the chaos that you face.
Thank you, Trevor. Yes, and this question is from Stella. When faced with discrimination, both from male and female colleagues, how did you overcome it? To be honest, have I faced active discrimination? I don't know. But there are times when, across clients, stakeholders, companies, where men may try to dominate you either through their language or behaviors. And as women, sometimes we tend to be submissive in face of that behavior. I think there are a couple of things. I mean, if you're facing, and I don't know the kind of discrimination, I have never actively faced, discrimination, but yes, I have faced maybe, strongly worded messages from men that I did not appreciate, or, being told by other women that, you are, I suppose, aggressive. Aggressive tends to be thrown out a lot as a bad word, and it isn't, right? I think the best way to do it is, again, be fact-based. I mean, if somebody is calling you out and is being, quite annoying about it, be fact-based, be calm, and respond to the behavior, not the person, right? Because every time I've done that, I have found the other person to become, the other person tends to become a little bit ashamed of their behavior. So attack the behavior if you have to, not the person, and be fact-based, be practical. I think the other thing, and I've learned this, from my family, is take a day to respond. I am an excitable person. The first reaction would be to, respond to an email in equal measure, or respond to a message equally. We have to account for the fact that sometimes people don't mean what they mean, but the digital channel probably conveys it in a different way. So I think the best thing to do is take a breather. Just completely take away yourself from the situation. Think about it from their perspective, and then figure out, is that person really being the annoying person that he's being? And if even after you've done all of this, they do not listen, I actively suggest, if you think it's discrimination, take it up the right channels, talk to HR, talk to people who can help you, because there is really no place for discrimination at any workplace. And if you're being faced with it, you don't deserve it. Thank you. And this question is from Kaylin. How do you keep your balance in managing work and personal life responsibilities during this pandemic? Eileen?
For me, number one, don't expect balance.
I was
Okay.
going to say balance. What balance?
No, yeah, like I said, reset your mindset, right? It's not about balance. It's about making one work uh, at whichever point in time. For example, just to be very concrete, I really work hard during the work hours. But if it's a weekend, I know what my priorities are. It will be more of my personal side, my me time, my family time. If it's during the weekday and a certain time, if it's, and this is a very simple example, maybe many can relate. As we work from home, we are home. So let's try to eat dinners, lunch, or family meals together with our family or our loved ones because we are home, right? But if we're in front of the screen, it's not helping us, right? Maybe there will be exceptions, but we must try our best. But the rest of the time, yeah, we can work hard. But it depends on the time. So if it's after work, try let's try to spend more time where it's no longer the work hour. Let's make it the loved ones hour, right? So net is that I think our priorities need to be straight, whichever time of the weekday or the weekend. It's not a general answer. It's what is called for depending on your work, in your role, and what you are doing at the time, right? And it also doesn't help working from home that, we just work, right? We need to do some breaks. We need to take our own leaves. We should raise hand and take a leave. Maybe we don't need it, but at some point we just have to step back and just rejuvenate, re-energize, do a hobby, right? So because it helps us move on, move forward better.
I think just adding on a funny note, I mean, I don't know about you, Eileen, but during the pandemic, I've learned to make I've made Dalgona coffee, I've made all kinds of chocolate cake, I've learned how to do, workouts by certain people. So I've pretty much, found ways of making sure that I'm in with the times, following stuff that's happening on YouTube. And that's the fun side of being engaged at work.
Thank you, ladies. And this question is from Sharon. If there's one leadership trait you would choose to apply during this pandemic, what would it be?
Yeah, I think the leadership trait here would be, I think it's a combination of having confidence, competency, and consistency, right? You are what you are. You already know what you are. You're not going to build any new learning muscle in your body, but being confident in a calm way and being able to deliver messages consistently, being the dependable person as a leader is going to be very, very important. So I think the leadership trait for me that's going to be very important is calm, confident, and consistent.
For me, it's resilience.
Yeah.
To me, that's the non-negotiable.
Yeah.
It's a mindset change, right? I know everyone has that resilience cell in their body. So let's find that. Let's harness that and let's, use it to our advantage.
Absolutely. And this question is from Patty. What is the biggest difference in the way we led before COVID, during, and after?
I don't think there is the tenets of leadership have not changed, right? And things that we were doing as companies before and after COVID have not changed. What COVID has done is it has accelerated certain behaviors and accelerated the necessity for you to adopt certain technologies to be able to deliver to those behaviors, right? So the biggest difference in the way we perhaps were leading before and after is that we probably need to be more grounded in order to understand what's really going on with our stakeholders, be it our customers, suppliers, clients, and so on, right? Because certain behaviors are fundamentally different now, and they're probably here to stay. So it's very important to have one ear to the ground, and if you weren't as a leader grounded or working with your teams to understand that, I think that has to change. I think the second thing is adaptable. I mean, leadership, the crisis, whether it's COVID or any other, I mean, it always teaches you how to be adaptable and, you know, rejig your operations in the time of change. My best example is, I mean, I talked about it in the beginning as well. When SARS hit, JD.com was, you know, JD.com had 11 stores. It was an offline physical company. And when SARS hit, they had to shut down all of their 11 stores or keep one store open. And they pivoted towards becoming online, not through a digital channel, but through, you know, texting and QR coding, right? And today, look where they are. So I genuinely feel that the biggest difference we will have to be is adaptable. We are dealt with the cards that we are dealt with. It'll be really important for us to make most use of the situation today and make sure you're using the right tools, using the data that's available to you to be able to adapt. In the end, what you want to make sure is your business, as Irene said earlier, is resilient, so that when the next disruption comes around, you've built your muscle, you've built your leadership muscle, you've built your change muscle, so that the rubber band doesn't have to stretch that much, right? We've built that resilience in the ecosystem. So I think we need to be adaptable, need to be resilient, and need to keep a ear to the ground.
All right. Pari was asking, what are the challenges you have encountered as a female leader, and how did you manage a male-dominated management team?
Maybe in IBM, it's much less of a question because we have, especially here, we have higher diversity. But no, to be fair, I think for me, in much earlier years, right, I would say it's quite similar to an earlier question that you've posed. You know, how do you handle, you know, what if there is discrimination? Or I had many years in my career where I had to lead teams which was composed of entirely, you know, all males, right? Remember, I had a very technical profession when I started, so everyone else was, male systems engineer and some other professions. But for me, if that happens, right, you just have to be weeding out the noise, right? What do I mean? Yes, it's not about being male or female. It isn't just necessarily about that. Maybe you'll hear, you know, why you're the first, you know, can you really enter, you know, this kind of a role because it's really for men? Come on, take that out. Okay, take emotions aside, focus on your skills, what you can do. You can even just be calm because your results will speak for itself. If you are good, you came out fixing the problem earlier than all of them, that's noise, right? So focus on your competency and your skills, what you have to do. Make sure you drive the outcomes that you're supposed to drive, and that will give the answer, okay? Don't worry about, you know, what they look like and, you know, whatnot, okay? Yeah. So focus.
Yeah, I think this is a really important question. I mean, it's not, wherever we have had female leaders, I mean, and I'm speaking from experience across multiple companies, sometimes you can be the only person in the boardroom. Sometimes you can be the only person in a team which is predominantly male oriented, right? I think the leadership styles displayed by men and women are different, right? And it is important for us to recognize that we may aspire towards, you know, equality or equity, but we are not the same, right? And therefore, emulating skills that men display is not the answer towards equality, or is not the answer towards, you know, managing a male-dominated team. I think we need to there are 2 or 3 things we need to be very careful of. If you're facing challenges as a female leader, you need to know that you are a leader for a reason. You know, whether that's your competency, whether that's the outcomes that you produced. You need to be empathetic, but you need to be able to take decisions. If the challenges to your leadership are proving to be harmful or disrupting the dynamics of the organization, you should be open to take hard calls, right? I mean, I think as a leader, you need to be able to do that. I think as far as managing a male-dominated team, I think, Eileen, you're right. I don't think it's about a male team or a female team. There are certain behaviors that you have to display. as long as you're grounded in your competency and you know what you're talking about, as long as you're empathetic and have a, can provide your team with a safe space, and more importantly, you have a moral compass, I don't think you will have a challenge managing a male team versus a female team. But I have to say this again and again, and I said this in the previous question as well, if you're being challenged, stand your ground. This is, we have to recognize the fact that we are not adequately represented in leadership positions, and therefore while we're trying to change that, it also means there has to be a change in behavior that men have to display. And sometimes you have to acknowledge the fact that perhaps they are not changing as fast as we would wish them to change, right? And therefore, as I say, attack the behavior, not the person.
And the last questions of today from the audience, this is from Gond. What are your advice for future female leaders?
Maybe I'll go first, and then Eileen, please, after that. I mean, I genuinely, this is a question close to my heart. I am passionate about creating, space for women at the leadership positions. I genuinely feel that there are 2 or 3 things we need to actively ask for. I think women tend sometimes to over-question themselves. I mean, and therefore we find ourselves over-mentored, but under-sponsored. I think I've spoken about this in several other places as well. We need to actively seek sponsors. And there is a difference between a sponsor and a mentor. A mentor advises, a sponsor is your champion, right? A sponsor is a person who will create spaces for you, who will advertise you, who will make sure that you are set up for your success, right? You need to seek a sponsor, and you need to seek a sponsor, especially as you find yourself getting into leadership positions. But the role of a sponsor has to be a two-way street, right? You need to make sure that you are adding to your sponsor's life as much as the sponsor is adding to yours, right? And this is where I absolutely love the 5C model of leadership that Indira Nooyi talks about, right? She talks about 5 C's that she has led by example. And she talks about how competency is at the center of it. I mean, you don't just show up because you're a woman. You show up because you come with experience, you come with delivered outcomes, you have made a difference. So competency has to be at the heart of it. I think the second thing I honestly feel is courage and confidence. I mean, I've often talked about the fact that when we talk to women in teams and you want to give them, positions of seniority, or you want to give them new roles, a lot of women will say, I need to think, or I'm not sure, I don't feel confident, I don't think I'm up for it. And I've seen that if you give similar positions to men, and even though this is a stereotype, many men will just put up their hand and want it. Don't second guess yourself. I mean, the fact that you're being asked is because somebody found you suitable enough and thinks that you will be able to change course and, take that role on. So have the courage and confidence to be able to say yes, take risks, right? Number 3 is communication. I mean, a lot of times women sometimes don't speak up as much. And I think communication with a purpose, persuasive communication is very important to wanting yourself to be in a leadership position, right? And then of course, the 4th that Indira Nooyi talks about, I love, is consistency, right? It's not just once. You need to be able to demonstrate these traits again and again so people find you dependable. The entire leadership is about delivering results again and again. So you need to be dependable. You need to have one face. You can't be one person here and another person somewhere else, right? So have that dependency. And the last is, at the end of the day, it's your own moral compass. What do you stand for? You need to have that character and integrity for someone to feel that when they sponsor you, they're adding to their character and integrity, right? So I genuinely feel that these 5 C's and the ask for sponsors is really, really important for our emerging future female leaders. Eileen?
Thank you, Trevor.
Yeah, so for me, I would really say, please let's be assertive, right? You will be surprised that I think we tend to generally, female leaders tend to underestimate what they really are capable of, right? Why? Because we feel, we shouldn't say it, it's too arrogant, if we say we're really good in something, we don't want to speak out loud. Stop doing this. I was like that before, I promise, okay? But you get to a point where it's not helping you, okay? What for me, my experience is that I realized that though I was feeling this way and I knew what I was capable of, there are many more. You cannot believe how many hundreds more there are out there who really would like to just have a good model to see and draw strength from, going up the ladder. So please, let's try to help others too. It isn't just, you're not just helping yourself, you're helping others get there too. And to me, the second and final point is we go back to the same principle of diversity, right? I am who I am because of the men in my life, my brothers, my husband, my son. You learn a lot from them. They make you whole. They keep you grounded. All of this. It is not because just all of our women friends, right? They help us get better. They help us get stronger. So we also learn from them, because when you have that kind of diversity as well in terms of learning and competencies, you become better also at decision making. So again, 2 points. It's not just about you, it's about how you can be for others too that you do not see today, right? And then second, let's also learn from the men, okay, and others, okay?
Thank you, Eileen. Your advice made me a bit emotional just now. Thank you so much, Charu, as well. So that's it for today. And thank you everyone so much for joining us. And currently, IBM, being one of our diversity employers, is still hiring, and they're committed to empower women to thrive within their organization. They provide flexible working arrangements, equal pay initiatives, return to work policy, leadership development program, paid parental leave, and many more. So their jobs are listed on our platform. Go check them out. And we also have a lot of resources to share with you on our platform. So make sure you sign up on halftheskyAsia.com. It's completely free. You also receive exclusive event invites like this one, job alerts, thought leadership content, and resources. And we have 2 more events coming in September, one next Tuesday on how to maximize your superpower to fuel success. And the other one on the 29th, we are going to have a chat with the co-founder of She Loves Data on the future of women at work in the age of rapid digitalization. So please check them out and sign up on our event page. Thank you so much again, Eileen and Charu, for your time today. And stay safe, everybody, and take care.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you.
Bye for now.
Good afternoon.
Thank you.
Stay safe.